This is Simply Lo-Fi, and you're listening to the expert with a heart.
Different, but we always say the first financial plan is the least relevant to you. You're just learning what financial plan is, how do you talk about it, how the setup, etc.
You tend to look at financial advisors as, like I said earlier, with the guys with the laptops and the Excel sheets.
Yeah.
And, planning is about the individual, about the human being. So if we can keep remembering that, it'll help. It'll get a better Excel sheet result as well.
There's a very thin line, and at times we really wonder where is it that we need to take ourselves out of a situation or a conversation that they get into.
We are not astrologers. We do not know exactly what the returns will be, what your expiry date is. As life happens, then we tend to think of it like a Karan Johar film, I think, happy ending at the end.
Yeah.
But there are twists and turns. So we just need to remind them of the villains lurking in the corner.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Simply Lo-Fi, and we have two very special guests. One, of course, you've already guessed who they are. Lo-Fi Navlakhi, our CEO and MD of International Money Matters Private Limited, IMMPL. And we've also got with us Khushbu Agarwal, the VP and Head of Financial Planning at IMMPL. Hi, Lo-Fi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
I'm very excited for today's episodes, if you couldn't tell. Hi, Khushbu. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
So before we started, I had a big grin on my face because today's episode, this is part 1, by the way, we're going to dive deep into the ins and outs of financial planning. Today, we're going to start off with part 1, where we talk about, some of the personal journeys that both Lo-Fi and Khushbu have, guided and been through with their clients. We're going to talk about how they set goals with their clients and, interesting conversations and having those real conversations and what that entails. So without further ado, let's start off. Khushbu, if I could address the first question to you, right? I think we touched upon this even in the union budget episode, right? Because we were trying to understand how different things that happen outside in the world impact financial behavior, investing behavior for your clients. So how have you seen real life experiences sort of shape financial behavior and bring conversations to the table when you sit down to plan with your clients? So what happens is the way you've grown with money, the way you've dealt with money in your childhood and the way it has changed over a period of time does have a lasting impact on how you're going to do about it today, Even if you have everything in the world, your inherent behavior is not going to change. There's something that stays with us. So I think some conversations around that helps us understand, this is where the belief is, where this is how they're going to be. And that is where if you get a financial plan done based on those principles, there's more adaptability, that a person would go ahead and, accept a plan. So if we say couples who have, say, funded their own post-graduation, for them, okay, I have done it. Yeah. I want my kid to do it. I want them to be equally independent. But the same set of people say, I have done it, I have struggled, I don't want my kid to struggle. So it's important to understand on which side they are, because I can have my belief, but that is not going to help them. So certain things like this, when we speak about them, we speak right from their childhood, how it's been, how has it changed, because when they started earning, how are they dealing with money, So all of that then doesn't come in the financial plan on the paper, but it's somewhere incorporated that way. So that's really interesting. So when a client comes to you for the first time, you're just starting this relationship with them, I assume that it's a bit of a vulnerable place for them also to be talking about their relationship with money. So is that a question that you directly pose and are upfront about at the very beginning, or is it something that you have to build to?
See, I think if you look at the way financial planning has evolved, I think there is an assumption that financial planning is an Excel sheet, it's numbers, it's calculations. Yes, that's the end objective, that you want to know how much money do you need for A goal, how much money you need for B goal. But to understand what are priorities? Why is something of higher priority to you than to somebody else? And what would be the implication if a particular goal is not achieved? Or what is that aha moment you would feel if that goal is achieved? I think becomes important. And as Khushbu mentioned, I think it's important that we as financial planners don't bring our biases and say, why are you feeling aha about, making one trip to your hometown, every year, or with your family. You're going to take them and go down memory lane and show them that. But it's a very, very big goal for them. It may not be big in terms of money, but it's important to make sure that that item has a tick mark against it. And, then the client will feel really, really good.
Yeah, and they feel supported, I guess, right, at the beginning. That's true. So let's take a scenario where, there's many different kinds of clients. There's younger clients, there's clients planning only for retirement. There's also clients who come to you together, right? Partners, life partners. How exactly do you start that conversation and get them to set their expectations? I assume there's a bit of marriage counseling involved. I'm just joking, but yeah.
No, but that's true. There's a very thin line, and at times we really wonder where is it that we need to take ourselves out of a situation or a conversation that they get into. So what we generally do is we start with the partner which we feel is speaking less, is not taking the lead. So we probably ask the same set of questions, how the journey has been, etc. But we try and start with the partner which we feel is not the dominant one, so let them speak first. Otherwise, we've got answers saying, okay, it's exactly similar, it's exactly similar to what this person is saying. So that's a chance for the other partner to speak up. Your experiences can't be the same. Your childhood has been different. Your experiences have to be different. So we try and tell them, to tell their own story in their own way. And each one of them, and there is no acceptance to say that it's same. If it's same, you repeat it. So something comes out of it. And what you'll realize is both the partner, the expectations of the journeys are different. And because the financial plan is for the family, there has to be a common point. So that is our homework to say, okay, what is the common point you can reach out to? How can it gel well? How do they think today? There's also a concept that is coming up to say me goals and we goals, So people are saying, okay, these are we goals. We both are aligned. Look at it similarly. Everything is same, okay? But these are these two goals which are for me, because something has happened in the past, Maybe I want to go with my parents, solely. I want to do a trip with them. It's my goal, okay? So that is something that is also coming up as a concept with the younger couples that we are working.
So what happens in very often, I think, with couples, that you tend to leave the steering wheel of a particular activity with one of them and say, okay, you're taking care of the finances, I am taking care of running the house, I am going to take care of this kids stuff, this part, holidays, you will take care of, and so forth. So in that, what happens is sometimes the person who is not driving it, their dreams, desires are sort of suppressed. They exist, they are latent, they're probably not, they're not thinking about it, they're not feeling bad that's not happening. But when occasions happen which sort of bring them out to the fore, they realize, oh my God, this is something that I always wanted to do and I have not planned for, not done it. And rather than it become a confrontational issue later, it's better it's out on the table up front. It could be that, yes, this I will do after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goals are met. Only then I will do this. But I think it's important to put on the table.
It'll never cease to amaze me how much you learn about people's behavior through financial planning. Your emotional quotient when it comes to marriage and relationships is already very high.
See, also what happens is, I think you tend to look at financial advisors as, like I said earlier, with the guys with the laptops and the Excel sheets. Yeah. And, planning is about the individual, about the human being. So if we can keep remembering that, it'll help. It'll get a better Excel sheet result as well.
Yeah, that's a good driver. So let's talk about maybe again a scenario where you've been planning with a couple, and you've seen them discover something new about each other. Both of you take this question.
So there was this couple, and the female had taken a break. So she had a very stressful job, So when kids happened, she thought, let me take a break. That anyways, she was planning to take a sabbatical, focusing on the kids, and everything was gelling up well. Everything went well. Then the kids started growing up and getting independent, right? So that there's a time where she's again getting that time, and she's not used to being free. That's not her nature. That's not never been with her. And therefore, there's this thought that is coming to her mind of, should I get back? Should I do something on my own? Okay, but it's very nascent, and therefore it's not been discussed with the partner. But she started speaking about it, and the partner was amazed that, okay, the thought is coming to your mind, but we've still not discussed, Why are we waiting for, if there's something and you want to go back, why to wait for another milestone? You can always, go back. And later when, this is how it started, but later when they actually went back and discussed, if she would have thought I'll get back in 3 years, 5 years, she actually got back in a year or two. So that, I think, was amazed, and we were amazed how it could help them discover something.
Nice. Lova, anything comes to mind for you?
See, I'm just thinking that probably these money questions or discussions are not dinner table conversations.
Yeah. Those would be very awkward.
And it's very difficult for one to start saying, okay, today I'm going to now understand what money means to you. What was your money script growing up? I mean, those are technical terms that we sometimes use. So I think the part where Khushbu mentioned, when we sit and do the plan, it is important to hear from both independently and then together about what the goals are. Because in that conversation and in that journey of trying to discover what the goals are, you can then probe and find out with that individual separately what that person's goals are and why they think A goal is more important than B. Sometimes the goals may be common, but the priorities for both may be quite different. Saying if, let's say, you ran out of money or you had shorter amounts, which of these goals would you sacrifice?
Yeah.
And maybe the answer is different. So I think there's a lot of element of transition with financial planning that comes in, and therefore the learning from there helps in these conversations, because then we are asking questions beyond how much you need to why this is important to you.
Yeah, fair enough. And do you recommend regular check-ins between the couple as well as with you when it comes to creating and sustaining a financial plan, especially in the couple scenario?
We do quite insist that we do a review every year.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we are on course. Current season is IPL, so you need 8.5 runs and over to win the game. But after 5 overs, let's just check in what's the run rate required, right?
Yeah.
So have you done better? Have you lost more wickets? Have you scored more runs, less runs? So I think it's pretty much that, right?
Yeah. Also, what happens is when you start with financial planner, this is new. Like you said, if you come with your partner today, you may not speak anything at the first go. It's new to you. Maybe, you miss it. But when you go back, you start thinking, okay, now you know what goals are. How do you think about it?
Yeah.
The next time when you come, you will have something more to add on. So very different, but we always say the first financial plan is the least relevant to you. You're just learning what financial plan is, how do you talk about it, how the setup, etc. But the more you do it is where people have, like we have seen second year, third year, people come up with very different goals. Now we're budgeting, now we know this. We don't want this, which was very important to them in the first year. Because you ask them, so we're asking questions they have to answer. Yeah. They'll answer whatever is coming to their mind. But then they have a year to think about it. And then it becomes more and more relevant.
So maybe this podcast 1 year later, we give better answers.
So before again recording, I was confessing that I have been a little disappointed with the markets recently. And Lova was like, why are you disappointed? Just plan for it better. But this is something you'll have to probably, constantly guide your clients on, right? So how do things like expectations, their own personal expectations of how their money is going to grow, the goals that they were going to achieve, and external situations like inflation or market volatility, etc., how do you kind of manage that for your clients in that, planning scenario when it's not just them, they're doing it with somebody else, right?
So, what we do is, at least the assumptions piece, or the basis of the financial plan, is something that we put on table. Okay. And for example, let's take life expectancy. If I were to ask you, what is the life expectancy I should take, the first answer would be, I don't want to live beyond 60. Now, let me live. Every person will mention 60, 70, 75 max, Our parents have not lived beyond that, or, this is how it is. Or they have lived, but when we take life expectancy, we at least take 100. The same plan, if I make with the life expectancy of 70 versus 100, the plan is going to look drastically different. So these assumptions, what is the returns expected? Now, if I ask you today, okay, you will give me a very low return. If I asked this question 2 years back, the markets were on high, everything was very positive, and people say, okay, why are you taking 10%, take 15%, 20%, that I've got 40%. So there's always a recency bias with the client. For us, we go back like 20 years and understand, what has been the average return, what have been in different scenarios. So all of that kind of try and incorporate to make the financial plan more relevant in all situations, like you said.
Yeah, I think frankly, I would think that the way we looked at plans, assumptions, issues has continuously evolved. So while we've been doing it for 20 odd years, I think the way we did the plan 20 years ago to today is dramatically different. And how all the factors that we incorporated even say 2 years ago versus now, there have been more that have come in. And where is that coming from? It's coming from some bit of research and knowledge, but a lot of it is coming from experience of other clients having gone through, faced something which we may not have thought of when we did their plans. And therefore now you can bring it forth and say, let's talk to everyone about it, or at least to the relevant people in the similar sort of age profile, that these are things that you need to look at. So I think it's a constant evolution. There are some aspects in the plan which are the number aspects of inflation, life expectancy, returns expectation. There is a scientific economic basis for all of that. And we are doing plans for 20 years. We are not doing it for 20 days or 20 months, right? Yeah. So it's 20 plus years for most people. So we need to have real solid basis. And then a continuous discussion around what would happen if this number or this assumption did not hold true. What happens if this was 0.5% higher? What happens if it was 1% lower? What happens if life expectancy, yes, we are taking 100, but what happens if you live to 110? And what will be the change if it was 90? So I think in everything, we tend to move away from absolutes to a range, because we are not astrologers. We do not know exactly what the returns will be, what your expiry date is, a whole bunch of things, and what's going to happen along the journey. So,
I think that was an important public service announcement that financial planners are not astrologers. Okay, perfect. Now, I'm also quite keen on understanding, because we did touch upon how you kind of have to double up as marriage counselors sometimes. I'm just kidding. But just the fact that, couples, when they come into a financial plan, and even if they've been consulting with an advisor for many years, there is a possibility that, certain goals get overlooked, right? How do you help them sort of realize their own goals that they may be missing out on?
So I think it's asking questions and looking at scenarios. So I'm just recalling a conversation with one of my colleagues saying, a friend reached out from the US. They've been there for some time. Parents are in India. They want to move back in the next year. They've made some money. So they think they can come back and then figure out life. Yeah. Okay. And they think, we want to move. So what should we do? So there's a whole bunch of questions that come to mind. But while we deal with those as to the whys and what what really is driving you to do it. One of the big reasons seems to be that parents are there and they'd rather spend time with parents. And therefore they are moving. And sometimes the difficult question to ask is, okay, let's take a scenario a few years later, maybe a few decades later, parents are not there. Are you happy being here? Are you going to say, no, I'd rather go back? Because I think what we need to bring to their attention is that as life happens, then we tend to think of it like a Karan Johar film, I think, happy ending at the end.
Yeah.
But there are twists and turns. So we just need to remind them of the villains lurking in the corner and say, what happens if that comes in? What will change? And, have the conversation about it.
Yeah, the motto of the wise is be prepared for surprises. That's what they say, right? I don't know. Yeah, I grew up with my mom constantly telling me that. I've still not gotten that used to surprises. So there you go. Now, interestingly enough, and we're going to end part one of the conversation with this question. But speaking of surprises, children. So talk to us a little bit about, how you help families navigate financial planning, especially when, kids grow older, they have their own ambition. How do parents sort of plan for that? And do you actually, as a financial planner, have to step in and help them even with their parenting?
At times, I think astrologers and counselors and marriage counselors and that's too much adding on. But obviously what happens is the important piece in all of these situations is your goals are most important. Times have changed, Like our parents used to think, let's educate the kid. The kid is going to take care of us. Yeah. We don't want to be dependent on our kids. We're very clear on this as a generation. Now, if you don't want to be dependent, you have to ensure that, your finances are planned for you. Whatever is left over is all for them. Now, there are people for whom the leftover piece is huge, so they have a huge estate and therefore, you're planning it accordingly. There are people who have limited resources, Now, the choices between restricting the funding to your kid today versus getting into a situation of, going and asking them for your retirement fund. What is it that you want to choose? So, if you go and tell them, say no to your kid, they're not going to listen to us. But if you ask them to make a choice from these, then they go back and think. So like, I have a case where the daughter had gone to the UK. She's completed her education thinking she'll get a job. And she's been there for like more than 9-12 months now. And they're funding this stay. Absolutely funding this stay, which is more than like a month, that they're doing. Now, and they thought they're going to give it another 2 to 3 years. But when we put things on paper, that has a huge impact on their retirement piece.
Yeah.
Now, the choice to make, and we put it on table at times, you make your choice. And that is where they went back to thinking, maybe, we should cut it to 6 months.
Yeah, that's so interesting because then you kind of have to make peace with your choice and then also sit down and have honest conversations within, the family. So I assume in that situation, they'd have to actually sit down and say, hey, this is not feasible for us beyond this period of time. So let's now work on it together and see what your plan B can be.
And that's too much, right? So they have to talk about it themselves. We actually thought the time we're going to say this, they're going to run from the office. What are you talking about? So but they went back. First thing is, are they both on the same page?
Yes.
They both agree to 6 months. That's the first thing. And then talking to the kid. And like you said, there's this other kid who wanted to do, like start something on their own. So it's like, that piece I'll take care. But the parents are taking care of his expenses. Now, that is not planned, right? You don't plan that. You plan, I'll fund the education and then everything will be taken care by the kid.
Yeah.
But you're funding and now it's a startup. So you don't know where it's going to end again, So these all get difficult. But how do you take a decision? So when things are a little on paper, you know that today's the day you have to make a choice. So go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And I think in some way there is sometimes fear pressure or social pressure saying, you didn't even support your kid, that sort of stuff. So I'm thinking back maybe 15, 20 years ago, one parent who we were advising, and she was recently widowed at that time. Both two elderly children, and one of them wanted support for business. And she had the money. And her sort of conversation with us was, can you figure out a way by which you can give me supporting documents in a way to be able to tell him, no, I don't have the money to support. Because that is the decision she had, but she was finding it very difficult to figure out how to say no to him. And the other child is not asking for anything, but, do I have this feeling that I should balance it? If I give him this, should I give her also this when she really doesn't need it? So can I say no instead? And so it was a whole bunch of things. And I think it was probably around the time where maybe it was the first 2 years or so that she was widowed, and therefore she was not the person handling the finances her husband used to. So she was herself nervous about the fact whether do I have enough, will I manage, through my lifetime. And now 20 years later, she's managing quite fine yet. So yeah, but it was a small amount, but it was, no, I don't want to, because I think it could become a habit.
Right.
Because he's running a business. So periodically there will be business ups and downs, and say, okay, can you just fund 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, like that. So
yeah, no, these are tough conversations. And like I said, it never ceases to amaze me how, how money can be the catalyst. And I think this is something maybe we can pick up in a later conversation, but a lot of interpersonal relationships in today's day and age, given the financial socioeconomic scenario that we live in, money is starting to have or play a huge or take up a lot of space in relationships, I think, and starting to affect, I think, relationships also in a very interesting way. And people are talking about it, which is different than has ever been. So maybe we'll pick that up in a later conversation. But join us for part 2 of this one, where we're going to now talk about cross-border financial planning, which is something that IMMPL is at. So we'll be back for part 2 with Lovai and Khushbu.
That was an episode of the Simply Lovai podcast series, Expert with a Heart.